All right, well, this is Bogus Basin. Usually covered in snow. They've made it more of a summer resort as well now. It's a ski resort, obviously, but they keep doing summer stuff to it. Looks like they've got a lot of cool stuff, like a mountain coaster and all that. Pretty cool. Well, what's going on, guys? This is Carl with the Racerred channel. I knew that guy on that YZ250. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I knew that guy. Saw some deer on my way up here, so I don't want to run into any of those. Anyways, guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about the history I know about Yamaha, this being a Yamaha R1. This is the 2008 model. This is the last of the non-cross-plane inline 4. After this model was the cross-plane, which sounds like a V8 muscle car. I mean, that cross-plane is just amazing. But they get a lot heavier too. This bike feels way lighter. So Yamaha was originally just a music company. They specialized in making things like pianos, and the president of that company, man, I can't remember his first name. I think his last name was like Kawakami or something like that, but he traveled around, and in his travels he found a need for motorcycles. And because music equipment was requiring a lot of wood, they just simply didn't have the resources in Japan to keep making and keep expanding their music business because of the limited amount of resources they had. And back then, those resources weren't as easy to get as they are nowadays. So there is something to be said about that, to be said about, you know, making something entirely out of metal, which was something that they had, but their timber, their wood resources were pretty limited. And so they started looking for different ways to save the company and make sure that they had a future. They just decided that motorcycles was that thing. So they started using their specialized metals that they used in their music equipment. They started using that on motorcycles. And although they thought that they may be too late to the game, they were not. In the late 50s, they began developing motorcycle engines, and eventually they created their first bike, their first production bike, which I believe was the YL1. And it was a really primitive bike. However, they started making advances quickly, and they were the first ones to make a oil-injected two-stroke, which came out shortly thereafter. I think it was in 61. They had a race bike that was successfully using oil injection, but in the mid-60s, I believe 63 or 64, they started mass producing their bikes with oil injection, and it was a reliable oil injection system. A little bit heavy for today's standards, but reliable nonetheless. And so they had, Yamaha had bikes that were just sharp-edged. They were the best you could get by far. They were blowing everybody out of the water. Honda at the time, they were all in on four strokes, and Yamaha had two strokes to where they were just the best. And so it's amazing to think about sometimes though, because the YL1, you know, in the early 60s was so primitive in comparison to what I'm riding right now, or even what they had designed 30 years later. By the way, this is Boise in front of me, the valley right here. You can see Boise in its entirety. It's amazing. Beautiful view. So basically from 1960 to, you know, that's the beginning of what a motorcycle was becoming, really. The beginning stages of the creation of motorcycles as they are today. But from 1960 to 1990 is only 30 years. And from 60 to 2000, obviously, that's only 40 years. So in 40 years, they went from making a YL1, which is very, very primitive, and they went from that to making these sharp-edged, high-performance, I mean 150, 200 horsepower super sports that are just absolutely seamless. This bike that I'm on right now is a 2008 Yamaha R1. It has fuel injection, and it has a lot of the amazing technology that went into their race program throughout the years, just built right into it. Some of the best looking bikes ever created. In fact, in my opinion, this is the best looking bike that was ever created. But the advancement in metallurgy and the seamless nature of how they make motorcycles today is amazing to me. To look at that history and to look at from, you know, where it came from to now is absolutely mind-boggling. This is like an alien spaceship compared to 40 years ago. I mean, you look at the bikes from 40 years ago and it's just not even close. 40 or 50 years ago. I mean, and the funny thing is, when I look at bikes that were made 20 or 30 years ago from today, which is 2024, I don't see a whole lot of difference. I think a lot of it kind of peaked, and they go back to old designs, old frame designs, old geometry, and it's not necessarily better, it's just different sometimes, I feel like. But Yamaha has always been very concerned with making the most beautiful looking bike. In fact, that is not true. Actually, it was in a change of management that caused that. I think it was like in, oh, I can't remember when that was, but they had a guy that said, you know, essentially he wanted his bikes to be the sexiest on the market, period. And they started making bikes with that in mind, and it certainly shows. I don't know of any better looking bikes. Yamaha has always been seamless in terms of their reliability, functionality, and their looks. I've always been partial to Yamaha for sure. They make some amazing bikes. I don't know very much about Kawasaki, but I do know that they were a manufacturer of bigger like military style equipment. And I don't really know anything about Suzuki either, but Yamaha in my mind, as far as the Japanese bikes are concerned, has always been king of the hill. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and the ride. Glad you came along. Here is more of Bogus and the valley. You can see Boise down there below. Man, it's pretty up here. This is a commonly ridden street among sport bike riders. Well, motorcycle riders as a whole like to come here and just let loose up here a little bit. And you don't really have to break any speed limits to have fun up here. The turns are so tight that you're barely breaking the law, just having fun. Anyways, guys, enjoy the view, and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.